here we go. The Rebel's Edge. It's a Monday. Yes, John Najarian looks very youthful, but that's actually not John Najarian. That's Glenn Fife, ladies and gentlemen, from Market Rebellion, and he's got a resume like you would never believe. For the people who've seen him before, you already know a little something about him. For the people who don't and haven't seen him before, he works at Market Rebellion. At one time in his life, he actually worked with the Houston Texans. He's got a great background in a lot of different industries, and he's done a fantastic job for us. And he's joining us today. It's good to see you, Glenn.
Yeah, it's great to see you, brother. You're making me blush now. Jeez, come on.
Well, I was gonna tell you real quick too. I was telling you beforehand, we're gonna give a quick story. So last week I had to run off. I had to go to a funeral, and just 48 hours up in Minnesota. It was my high school football coach. This guy turned so many guys into NFL and NBA players, and a couple guys who had a shot at the Olympics. Glenn, that from one high school in the middle of Minneapolis downtown area. This is a place called Central High School. This is also where Prince went to school with all of us, all the Najarian boys. But the guy who was the pastor flew in from LA, Glenn. He had 2 Super Bowl rings himself. He played for the 49ers and had a great career. He was a defensive end who he told a great story about the fact that he was inspired by me. And I said, how on earth did I inspire you? He says, well, I'm 6'5". I'm, a big lean dude in high school, and I lined up next to you on the track. And he said he figured he had me. And next thing he knew, he was 3 hurdles behind me when I finished. And he told me, he goes, I was never ever going to be that guy again. I need to get faster. And next thing you know, he's running a 4.3840, and he's playing in the NFL. So the number
and he's got a heavy hand now with 2 rings on it.
And the number of Super Bowl rings in the room for the funeral, and there was, several hundred people there. I think I counted 11 or 12. So it gives you a little idea that this coach did a lot of great coaching, sent a lot of kids to Nebraska, Minnesota, Wisconsin, all over the country, really, USC. He's just a magical guy and a great person. And it was a great celebration of a guy who lived 87 years. So it was nothing sad, all happy, and everybody understood. And it was a good time. But the sports part of it, it reminded me a little bit about you and I, because we're always reminiscent about football days, right, Glenn?
Oh, man, the stories you get out of those guys, especially the ones that were in the league for so long. I mean, just tremendous stories, funny times that they've had. I mean, it's incredible. I bet there was a lot of great memories that were passed around.
Oh, and obviously the stories always get bigger and better, right?
Exactly.
That's what we do.
Exactly.
But anyway, I know we got to jump into it. So let's jump into the macro minute. And as far as the macro minute for me, Glenn, this whole thing about the debt ceiling to me is as macro as it gets. It's as scary as it can be, except everybody always knows we end up in the end kicking it down the road. I think we most likely do that again, unless McCarthy really digs his heels in, man. But if not, we're going to see the same old, right? I mean, kick it down, raise it up, and do nothing about it. Hopefully that's not the case, but it might be.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Every single time they've just found a way to move past it and kick it down the road, like you said. But I don't know. I mean, we've seen them take a strong stance on a lot of different issues during Biden's term so far. So it's interesting. This could be the one time, right? And I think you haven't seen the markets get spooked too much over the last week, but it hasn't gone up either. And we've seen a lot of analysts out there looking for a move higher, and it hasn't happened. So it'll be interesting here in the coming week.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we got the next one up, Glenn. I know you're powered up, ready for this one. Hey, Jared, fantastic what?
Fantastic future.
You got us.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, we got the fantastic futures. I got to tell you, it's always classic. Glenn does an outstanding job, so I'm giving him a little kudos on that. I'll tell you what, Nat Gas is where I go for fantastic futures. Nat Gas has been floating around near 2, Glenn, for a little while. Starting to make a little bit of a move to the upside. It's up well over 230 now. And along the way, we might be talking about something in the nat gas world in just a couple of seconds, because we got something going on in that particular sector as well.
Yeah, definitely. We'll touch on that here in just a bit with some big news coming out of that world. But I agree with you. And you're seeing a lot of the names in that sector move higher today. And I think that we're going to see a nice little bounce here in that gas. So definitely a focus here with it, if it making a move down near the lows. And with this news now that we'll talk about here in just a minute, it could make an even bigger move, I think, in the coming days and weeks.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
With that, I do want to move in because nat gas futures are moving. But have you looked at feeder cattle over the last few weeks? Because that has made quite the move. I know my people in Texas are happy. It's up 25% year to date, which is astonishing. So, which also plays into the inflation factor, right? And we've seen inflation, move lower over the last few weeks, but it's hard to see it moving any lower when you have feeder cattle and some of the other future names moving up 25% or more year to date.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we teased you a little bit. We're not quite there yet, but we're going to jump into some commodities now, Glenn. And we're going to talk about Newmont Mining. Now, this is a name, I think everybody kind of knows this name. How about this bid today? $18 billion bid for Newcrest. They're going to get together. We talk about these mergers and acquisitions all the time, especially it seems like on Mondays. Mondays is Monday merger day. And that we've lived up to that this time and go around as well. By the way, with this acquisition, they also expand a lot of their reach when it comes to copper. The operational synergies are there. This is going to be a very, very unbelievable company, I think, going forward, Glenn, because gold, and you and I talk about it all the time. We talk about GLD. We see options in there all the time. GLD over the last couple of months has gone from the high 160s to the low 190s. This move has been there, and we're seeing gold move along the way over 2000 as well. So a lot going on in this particular part of the space.
Absolutely. Yeah. GLD has hit, nonstop is what it seems like on our UOA log over the last couple months. And it's been absolutely on a tear, along with the miners, especially. We've just seen continuous hitting in the miners nonstop. And I'll actually turn it over to this tweet from Eric Balcunas over at Bloomberg. He posted that we've seen a massive surge in precious metals, in the ETFs in precious metals over the last month. In May, it saw a 13.4% increase in net inflows in precious metal ETFs, which I thought was incredible, especially if you look at the historical months year to date. So that's a huge one that just further supports this move here.
Yeah. And going to the next one in this merger Monday, now we're going to take a look at One Oak, which is making this huge acquisition, Magellan Midstream. It's $19 billion, Glenn. These guys are not fooling around. We are seeing a lot more activity in this space, in the commodity space, but specifically the energy part of the commodities. And we're seeing this one. This actually does open up for One Oak something very big, which is adding crude oil, adding along with the refining products as well. There's a lot going on underneath when you take a look at this one. Is the stock is down relatively significantly off of this, but it'll move around a little bit as people start to see the largest of these pipelines. These guys are going to be a monster. It's going to be a very, very interesting to see. Are they all going to get approval? That's the one thing I always wonder when I see these huge deals getting done. Can they get them approved? We'll see. It's going to be pretty interesting. What do you think about this one, Glenn?
Yeah, I agree with you, especially on the oil side of things, because as far as that goes, it'll impact international markets as well, right? But 19 billion, 18.8 billion. Pete, you got 18 billion. We can just maybe go buy someone real quick, because that's incredible. Almost 20 billion deals over the weekend. That's insane. Like you said, just throwing around money. So I agree. This is huge for the industry and just further supports that move that we just have seen in the oil markets.
Yeah, it's been wild, and it's been up, it's been down, it's moved around. We've obviously got OPEC and some of the moves that they've made. This is a very hot topic. There is no doubt about that. People talking about clean energy and everything else, but trying to figure out the best way to get these things together and mesh them together. All right, SOFI, that's where we're going next. We got a downgrade today that really has hit the stock pretty hard today. Wedbush came out there. It was at an underperform, or excuse me, it was at a neutral, moved to an underperform. And this stock is definitely getting hit, and it's pushing a lot closer to that 52-week low, Glenn, than we've seen in a while. When you look at the balance sheet here, It's upside down. They've got a huge amount of debt to the cash position. Call it $4 billion. They've got some large shorts in here as well. A lot of people thinking that this is a company that's maybe under some serious pressure. I think I'm one of those. 10 to 12% of the shares are shorted at this point in time. They're pretty happy today. I don't know if I see any covering either, Glenn.
Yeah, this name has just gotten beaten down, and I worry about them too, because there was so much hype around this company during the pandemic, and we saw all those stocks make a move higher, and now they're just so much lower from their all-time highs. And now they're getting hit with this downgrade from a huge firm. It's down 6%, and I just see it going lower. But that short interest is what gets me a little bit excited here short term, right? If we can see some sort of a pop, maybe we get some short covering now that those guys have made some money on this thing. And you always know that can fuel a name like this higher quite substantially. So it's interesting here, now down 6%. But let's turn it over to another name that's kind of been beaten up as of recent, but today seeing a nice little surge on some news at Shake Shack. Shake Shack now trying to get facing a proxy essentially from a activist investor, Engaged Capital. They did double their profit, or they think that they can double their profitability by hiring consultants. Although sales rose last quarter and the stock is up 57% year to date. So not sure what the investor is worried about here, and then wants to spend more money on hiring consultants. What are your thoughts there, Pete?
Yeah, it's interesting, Glenn, because normally this would happen if things looked pretty bad, right? I mean, if things were awful and you're concerned and the stock's getting beat to hell, you might say, well, you know what? Maybe these activists are right. You know, this thing needs to do this, that, and the other. I'm not so sure. As a matter of fact, hit 52-week highs today, traded over 71 bucks. This is a stock, as you just mentioned, year to date. This thing has done an amazing job. Here's the one concern that I do have about this company, though. Someday, Glenn, they got to show me that they can make money because they've gone for a long time. Now, there are quarters, very much like an Uber, where, okay, you got a quarter where you made money. Maybe we're finally over the hump, and then they lose money. You know, and so that's one of the concerns that I have. I look at the balance sheet, a little bit concerning. I look at how the shorts are in here. That's pretty high as well. So there's a little bit of apprehension that I've got, but you can't deny where this stock is right now and the fact that maybe they don't really have to worry as much about whatever efficiencies these guys are trying to get them to do, because for crying out loud, this stock has been ripping and today ripping even more.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a name also that's hit the log quite recently on UOA. And by the way, I do want to mention that we do have a buy one, get one offer on UOA. So if you want to get started, go to marketrebellion.com/bang. I'm subbing in for John here. So again, marketrebellion.com/bang to get in on that deal. Let's turn it over to sports, huh?
All right, let's do some sports, because I got a sports guy with me. Not that John doesn't have his sports, but Glenn, I mean, you were into stuff, man. I mean, you were in the front office. You're the C-suite kind of a guy, so you understand this stuff. I've been talking about Boston, and I said earlier in the year, Glenn, I said, you know what? This is the sports town of America, and they were. The Bruins, unbelievable, had a record year, out of the playoffs. Then you look at the Celtics, who were having a phenomenal year as well. They had this great team. They were playing great team ball, doing everything right. They had the best record at times during the season, but they've been struggling a little bit. Matter of fact, they were down pretty significantly to Philadelphia. 2-3, you got to go to Philadelphia. And what do? Well, the MVP didn't really show up, because they took him took him there, and then they came back home for the final game, right? You know, it was game 7. It's a big game. Well, who stepped up? It wasn't the MVP. You know how many Embiid, you know how many points he had, Glenn, in the game? 15.
Yeah.
You know who had 51? Flip that around a little bit. Jason Tatum. I mean, the guy lit it up. He had a record playing. And when you look at what he did with the points and the rebounds and his assists and everything, I mean, this game was his. He took it over, and they absolutely whooped Philadelphia. So they're on to the next. And you know what? The NBA is getting pretty interesting, because there's a couple of teams that are moving around that I don't think everybody expected to be there. So what do you think right now? Denver, LA, I think that one's going to be a good series.
It's going to be a great series. I mean, I just don't see anybody taking out Denver, though. I mean, they've just been the best team all throughout the season, and they haven't let up either, really, in the playoffs. But on the Boston side, I mean, that's going to be a series right there. And I mean, it's their MO. I mean, it's Boston's MO every single time. The Patriots did it. They came back against the Falcons to win that championship. I mean, how many times did Tom Brady do it? We've seen the Bruins do it. We've seen the Red Sox do it, and now the Celtics do it, and they come back and take the series in Game 7, and now going to the conference championship there. It's incredible, and it's just happens every year with Boston, it seems.
Yeah, it's impressive, man. I mean, I love the city. I love what they did. They had the greatest regular season ever for the Bruins, but man, and it looks like just maybe, the team they lost to, Glenn, is the team that's still in it, and they just keep advancing and keep advancing. Right. So, you know what? If you lose to the guys who end up maybe winning the cup, then it's not quite as embarrassing. It's still embarrassing, but not quite as much. Exactly. All right. You and I were talking about this. We love talking football. You and I both do. We go back and forth, and you're a heck of a lot younger than me, but you actually know a lot of the names that I can refer to, so that's always kind of fun. All right. So who had the best draft? Now, John and I have kicked around ideas like this before, but I'd love to hear from you. Who are the 3 teams that you would say, you know what, going into this year, because of what they did, maybe even in free agency, but specifically the draft, who really improved? Who made their team a team that people are going to maybe start going, hey, where did these guys come from? So what do you got, Glenn? I know you got some good ones.
I got 2 teams who were already good teams, and one you could argue is a great team. And then one that kind of shocked me. And so I'll start it off with the Bills. I thought that the Bills had a tremendous draft, and they're just continuously getting better. I mean, they paired their quarterback up with a fantastic receiving tight end, probably the best receiving tight end in the draft. Yep. So they're only getting better there on the offensive side. And then on top of that, you got the Giants, who were a good team. They've been improving nonstop in New York. I mean, you could argue they're the better New York team right now, even though Jets have Aaron Rodgers now. But I think that the Giants are slowly but surely packaging together a phenomenal team around that younger quarterback, Daniel Jones, who was rocky at first, but now he's starting to get better. And he's putting them together with Schmitz, who's just a fantastic center out of the FBS. And I think this guy's going to be a starter for years to come. And then lastly, the Bears. I mean, I had to go with the hometown Chicago Bears here because they added not only DJ Moore in the offseason, which was a tremendous get from the Panthers, but then they added an offensive tackle. And then they also had 4 picks in the top 70 of the draft, which to add those many young players around Justin Fields, who could become a great quarterback. He hasn't sold me yet. I still think that he's got a lot of work to do, but I think that if he can put it together, he's going to be a tremendous quarterback in the future. And he's going to have a lot of pieces, young pieces around him going into these next few years to build, hopefully, what they hope is a championship team. Yeah, what about you, Pete?
I liked everything you just said. I really do. I will go back to the Giants, though, because Schmitz, wow, he's a University of Minnesota kid. I love that kid. 6-year guy, unbelievable center. He will be with the Giants most likely for the next 10 years, and people will be talking about him for the Hall of Fame, I think, when he's done. That's how good, and he's a big son of a gun, Glenn. Usually those centers aren't 6'4". He's 6'4", maybe 4.5, and weighs about 310. He's going to be able to move some people around out there. I do like those Jets, though. I think they really improved. All right, here's what I got. Your old team. I think they did everything they could do and maybe even did better than I expected. They go right away with the quarterback, C.J. Stroud. Great move. They go right away with the best player in the draft, not quarterback, but best player, Will Anderson. That guy is the best defensive end / linebacker, edge rusher, whatever you want to call him. People have no idea how good that guy is until they get a chance to watch him in the NFL. He will light it up. He's better than Micah Parsons right now, in my opinion. I mean, he's really
that's
special.
A huge statement right there.
Then they got a nice linebacker from Alabama to just be another part of that whole defense as well. So I think that coach is loaded up. I look at the Detroit Lions. I don't think they were a mistake last year. You look at the second half, all they did was win, put up a lot of points. They had issues on defense. That was definitely their problem. Well, what did they do? Well, they got in my opinion, the best linebacker in a very long time to come out, Jack Campbell from Iowa. He is a freak show. They also did something that Dan Campbell's famous for. He loves tight ends for a very good reason. Sam Laporta from Iowa. So they went Iowa when they went further down the draft after getting a running back that's going to absolutely be a superstar, I think, in the NFL.
And you know, Campbell's a guy that we love, right? I mean, he's our kind of guy that just high intensity, high energy, and he's going to get a lot out of those guys for sure.
And get a big guy. See, Glenn, you know this better than anybody, but here's something inside NFL that no one ever brings up on TV. These color guys are terrible. Give me a big middle linebacker. Why is that? Well, because then you can't run the ball. If you can't run the ball and we know you got to throw the ball, we have an advantage. And when you've got a guy 6'5", 255 pounds who can run a 4.5 40, tells me that he can get around. Oh, by the way, he's the Butkus Award winner. He's everything. I mean, that's what you want. And that's something, by the way, that the Chicago Bears did really, really well in the offseason. They picked up some linebackers. One of them is about the same size, and he's a heck of a player. My last one, Pittsburgh. Broderick Jones, the offensive tackle, down there from Georgia, of course. Georgia and Alabama must have put about 100 kids into the draft this year. It's unbelievable how good they are. But Joey Porter Jr., his name might sound familiar. His father, Joey Porter, he also played in the NFL for a long time. 6'3" corner. I always give me a tall corner who can run a 4.4. I'll take him all day long. All day long. And then you've got Darnell Washington, the biggest tight end I've seen in a long time. He can run. He's got a 7-foot wingspan. And he is going to be special. He's not known by everybody because at Georgia, they got a guy who might be in the top 5 picks next year, a tight end, who's unbelievable. Kid come all the way from Napa, California. He goes to Athens, Georgia, but he's the best tight end I've seen in a long time. I think he's better than the kid at Utah, and that kid was a superstar. So I really think those teams have absolutely moved themselves to the next level, each and every one of them. Don't be surprised if Chicago and Detroit this year are fighting it out with the Vikings and maybe Green Bay, if Green Bay is any good. Jordan Love, tell me this, and then we'll go. Jordan Love, in college, he goes to Utah State. Not exactly the Pac-12, right? I mean, so he's going against somewhat inferior competition relative to Pac-12, Big Ten, SEC, ACC. The guy threw quite a few interceptions. Not all that many touchdowns even. So why was he a first rounder? And am I wrong when I'm shocked that they have put so much into this guy as their next quarterback, Glenn?
Yeah, I mean, it's time and time again with the draft in them, and you just seen that they haven't really supported that offensive side of the ball. And I'm surprised that they stuck with Jordan Love on that end. And continued that with that, I guess, rebuild that they're going to try to rebuild around him, unless they're looking at the 2024 draft, which perhaps I know there's some really good quarterbacks coming out of that draft, but it's just shocking. And it's something that you can see why, their big dog moved on to New York. And that's why now they're in the position that they're in. But yeah, I don't know. Time will tell. I haven't seen any progress really out of him. And like you said, the stats weren't that great out of college anyways. So time will tell. But it's one thing that I think you touched on is the biggest key that I take away from this offseason is all the teams just getting bigger. You saw this huge shift to smaller linebackers, smaller running backs in the past. And now you're kind of seeing that shift back to it. Cause I think a lot of these guys are more athletic coming out of college now. They're faster, stronger at a bigger size than they used to be. And now we're seeing the NFL teams really take that on and go back to kind of that old school, put a thumper in the middle and stop the run kind of scheme. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, I didn't even mention it, but the steal of the draft, also Detroit, Hendon Hooker. Everybody listen up. That guy, 2 years from now, you're going to be wondering how on God's green earth did he slide that far down in the draft? Because that guy should have been in the first round. He's a freak. He was going to be a Heisman Trophy winner. He had some of the best numbers I've ever seen. And you look at his career, Glenn, the guy doesn't throw interceptions. He's efficient as all get out. He's the best throwing quarterback out there. 69% completion over his career. I mean, that guy's going to be special. He did hurt his leg, but he'll come back from that.
Why didn't the Vikings grab him? I was waiting for the Vikings to pick him up.
They should have. I'm still mad at those guys. They had I gave them I do a radio show up in Minnesota. I gave them a D for my ranking in the draft. They were terrible. They got the shortest receiver who's not fast and the shortest cornerback who's also not fast. That was our first and second round draft picks. I mean, honestly, who does that? Well, thanks a lot, Glenn. I always appreciate it. Always have fun. It's always great to get together with you. And next time John's out, man, I think you got your spot right back because John better start getting worried about you.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It's fun.
Yeah. We'll see you guys tomorrow on the Rebels Edge, 1 o'clock Eastern.